Good. Yeah.
Welcome, everybody. I hope it has been a wonderful summer. We can enjoy one more week at least. This is the Beverly School Committee Committee of the Whole. Tonight is Wednesday, August 23rd, 2023. The time is 7 p.m. We are meeting in a hybrid/remote model this evening using a meeting platform that is provided at no cost to our district. It does allow for remote participation as well as public access to the open portions of our meeting. We are being recorded by the platform, and BevCam is streaming us and broadcasting us on their channels. On June 16th, 2021, the former governor signed Chapter 20 of the Acts of 2021, and on February 12th and again July 16, 2022, he extended those provisions to, among other things, allow public bodies to continue to hold meetings remotely until March 31st, 2023. And now our current governor and legislature has extended further for 2 years until March 31st, 2025. These acts specifically suspend the need for the quorum and chair to be physically present and asks our body to use technical methods to allow safe public access. As a note, Beverly also has prior approval for remote participation, although through that permission from the Attorney General's office, the chair and a quorum do physically need to be present. So that will be the operating mode when the acts expire in 2025. Tonight is a committee of the whole meeting, which means that members of the public do not have an opportunity to address the body. However, our September 13th regular meeting will be the next opportunity. For those members of the public that wish to comment or be sent a link to our remote meeting platform, please inform residentvoice@beverlyschools.org in advance, or if you show up in person, we will have a sign-up sheet at the podium. You do need to state your name and address for the record and limit your remarks to 3 minutes. You may alternatively supply an email for the chair to read into the record. Remember, this is an address to the body, and we will not respond. Joining us today are members of the school committee and various members of the district administration and leadership teams. I will conduct a full roll call attendance in just a moment so that we can capture all of those who are present. Please do remember, if you're a remote participant, that any audio or video you supply on the platform will become part of the meeting record, and as such, please use your mute functionality to prevent background noises. I would now like to complete our roll call. Present in the room this evening, we have Ward 3 Representative Kimberly Cloello.
Here.
Online in the remote platform, Ward 2 Dr. Kenan Mackenzie DeFranza.
Here.
Present in the room, Ward 5 Karen Robinson.
Here.
And from Ward 4, Dr. Jeffrey Silva.
Here.
Ward 6, Representative Lorinda Visnick.
Here.
I am Rachel Abel, representing Ward 1. We will hold for the mayor. I believe he is on his way. Also joining us on the remote platform, we have Assistant Superintendent Dr. Dorothy Flaherty.
Here.
And we have Dr. Andre Morgan.
Here.
And for convenience, both Dr. Trocheck and I are also on the remote meeting platform with BevCam. Let's look around the room. We have Bethany Spolansky with us this evening.
Here.
We have Aaron Brown with us this evening.
Here.
We have Judy Miller.
Here.
And it's Steve Plummo. Plummo, okay. We have Mark Thomas.
Here.
We have Jean Sherburne.
Here.
We have Superintendent Sue Trocheck.
Here.
And in our audience, we have members of our transportation department. Okay. I think that covers the housekeeping at the beginning of our meeting. Our agenda is rather short. I will let people know we do have an executive session planned as our final item of the evening, and from that we will adjourn in executive session, not to return to open session. Our next order of business is the Pledge of Allegiance. I didn't nominate anyone ahead of time. Kimberly Cuela, would you mind leading us in the pledge? I think there usually is a flag there, but we have another one. Oh, it's behind the TV. Great, thank you so much. To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you so much for that. Our next order of business is the approval of the meeting records from our Committee of the Whole open session that we held entirely remotely on July 6, 2023. They were distributed in your packet. Could I have a motion to approve?
I'll make that motion.
Thank you, Ms. Coelho. Second?
Second.
Thank you, Dr. Silva. Were there any edits or corrections that the committee would like to note? Ms. Coelho?
I don't know if it matters, but my name was spelled incorrectly.
Oh, there's a missing E, correct?
Yes.
Okay, we can add the E. Are there any other material or typographical errors we'd like to correct before we post them? I'm not seeing any. We are using the remote platform tonight, so we will do a roll call vote. Mayor Cahill is absent. Ms. Coelho?
Yes.
Dr. Mackenzie DeFranza?
Abstain, I was not there.
Okay. Ms. Robinson?
Yes.
Ms. Visnick?
Also abstain, I was not there.
And I skipped over Dr. Silva?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. And Ms. Abel, yes. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Is that 5? We have an absent and an abstain. Oh, wait, I wrote yes next to your name. Okay, I'm sorry. 4. Okay, 4, 0. No, 4, 1, 2. 4, 1, 2. We're going to be a little rusty this evening. Okay. No, there's 1. Oh, it's an absence, right. Okay, 402. Okay, because there's only 6. Gotcha. Okay. We'll remember how to do this together. Thank you. Yeah, I know. Okay, and I think we're going to have the mayor join us in a second. So that was our agenda item number 3, and that motion passes 402. Okay, next we will hear from the superintendent, and please share your report.
So thank you, everybody, and welcome back to our new school year. It's August. We hope everybody had a great summer. I have a few different items on my superintendent's report today. First, we're going to hear from Mark Thomas about some cell phone handbook changes, and that is actually a voting item. We'll need to have the committee vote to make those changes to the handbook so that we can have them effective at the start of the school year. We'll have a discussion and conversation about the 23-24 school district calendar. That is also a voting item, as I had left out an important date that we need to discuss and consider for the calendar for the year. We're going to hear from Aaron Brown and Steve Palomo and Judy Miller. We have done a lot of work looking at and considering changes to the IT department, just as we have expanded and the number of devices in the district has expanded and the role of IT has expanded. So we're going to bring forward just some of you to keep you up to date on what we're thinking and the direction that we're hoping to go in. And then we also are just going to give you a quick update on human resources hiring to date and that sort of thing. So that's what we have on the agenda. And the first item is the BHS cell phone handbook changes. As you know, we came forward in, I think it might have been May with or even earlier with our handbook for the high school. And at the time, we maintained the policies for cell phones. Over the past 4 or 5 months, Mark's met with teachers and with administrators and had some conversations about what we can do at the high school. he spent some time, I think, researching what other schools do, and also checking in with Lisa Oliver, who, as you know, made some significant changes at the middle school, and so has come forward with some ideas. And Mark, I don't know if you want to just talk a little bit through what the expectations that you have shared with the students and the staff are for the coming year.
Yeah, thank you. So in a nutshell, basically what we're looking at is students have 4 classes throughout a day. When they walk into a classroom for their first period, they will walk over to a classroom cell phone locker, put their cell phone right in it. As part of our protocol for attendance and that type of thing, teacher will go over, lock it for the class, go on teaching for the 84-minute period or 40-minute advisory, and then at the end of the class, teacher will unlock it, students can retrieve their phones, move on to the next class, same process for each class going forward. Students will also be able to have it with them in the lunchroom or any non-instructional time. But really what it boils down to in a regular day is in between classes and in the cafeteria during lunchtime. So they'll have access to check it. You know, we have students that are working, have to talk to their bosses throughout the day, maybe check in with somebody, so they'll have the ability to do that in between. The real goal here is to maximize our instructional time, and I don't think it's news to anyone that a cell phone device has definitely impacted our students' ability to focus on the task at hand in the classroom and maximize what they're getting out of a given class. Students that are unable to adhere to this policy, they'll be working with their assistant principal on next steps. That's something that it might look like they might be required to turn their cell phone into the assistant principal for the day as a next step on that. So we're really going to try to work with the students and really build the capacity to make this whole system work. And like I said, the ultimate goal here is to really maximize our instructional time. We've done a lot of research around device use and the impact it has on our teens, and there's overwhelming research that talks about students, even with a phone in their pocket, and I'm tapping mine as I say this, but even with a phone in their pocket, it's still not something they can completely disconnect from and engage in the task at hand. In the letter I sent to parents and students, we really tied that to some of that research so they could hear from some professionals as well. So that's right, there were links right in there so people could not only read about it, there was a short video in there, so really trying to hit people with as much factual information and research-based information as we could. Overall, what we came up with was the actual disconnection of actually putting it somewhere away from off their body was where they could maximize that academic time the best. So that's kind of how we got to where we are.
Dr. Silva first.
First of all, I'd like to applaud you in supporting this. I think this is a great policy. I think it's clearly in the interest of the students and, like you say, maximizing the educational experience that they'll have at the high school. And, you know, I'm hopeful and somewhat certain that parents will understand that we have the best interest of the students in mind. And so I'm very happy to hear this.
Thank you. Yeah, some decent feedback from parents after I sent out the information about it, so that was nice to see.
Great.
Next, I'll go with Mayor Cahill, then Ms. Visnick. Oh, you didn't have your hand up. Okay, then Ms. Visnick, there you go.
I have 2 questions for you. The first is, do you anticipate or any exceptions? For instance, I can imagine perhaps a student with a medical issue, those parents saying my child needs to keep their phone on them. Maybe you've already received some of those. So do you anticipate those? And if so, do you have a plan for how to handle them? And I'll stop there and I'll save my second question.
Yeah, so just as with any kind of medical need of a student, that's going to be handled through our nursing department, and probably probably the example that people are most familiar with is students that are diagnosed with diabetes might need their phone to monitor it. So that's the one that comes out right away. We have a small amount of students that do need that. We've already been in contact with some of those parents. Our nursing staff, when they return on Monday, will be doing that reach out, and then in turn, reaching out to teachers to let them know that particular student X needs to have their cell phone on them for medical reasons.
Right, and so the follow-up to that is, if I'm over here being grumpy that I don't have my phone and my neighbor has theirs, right? Have there been discussions, or do you have a plan for how to manage that situation? Like, because I have to imagine that there will be that, I'll use the word jealousy.
Yeah. So we did talk about that, and to be honest, in moving from my role as assistant principal, where I'd be working closely with students in needs around these types of things. Honestly, the students that need the phone for medical type of support are generally the ones that kind of go along with the structure of what we're asking them to do the best around that. In other words, it's in their bag, not being used. And quite often, it's not something they have to check during a class. It's something that, it's more if their blood sugar levels were off or something along those lines. And it's not just diabetes. There are other conditions that might require something like this. So we are aware of that. And as far as dealing with the jealousy factor, as you said, we think that these students typically are more of our model students as far as cell phone behavior, and it's a way they know it's a necessity for themselves, so they don't have it out inappropriately, and that's been our experience. So we're going to lean on that a little bit.
I'll hold my second,
Okay. Ms.
if you want to.
I also have two questions. One of
Sure.
them is like half of a piggyback off Lorinda. So other than just like medical students that might need it, certain special needs kids, like I won't say his name, for example, I have a neighbor who's in the Ladders program with my son who has very bad anxiety, and throughout the day if he's stimming or whatever, he'll text his doctor, his therapist, and be like, I'm having a rough time, can you help me? Text back a few words, and then they calm down. And they shouldn't be doing it during class, but I believe two of his teachers know that he does that. So will there be any like accommodations for kids that have like, heightened anxiety and issues like that?
So, yeah, I mean, number one, when you talk about two teachers know, some teachers don't, the goal, one of the big goals of this is to be consistent across the board with how we're addressing this. And that's probably that inconsistency about how we manage it from teacher to teacher has probably provided more issue than anything else, and that's no one's fault. It's just different styles and different ways people handle it. Because prior to this, we treated it more as a classroom management piece. Now we're trying to make it a little more uniform across. So that's one piece. As far as a student struggling with anxiety, that's where we're going to lean on the school supports around that. And if a student does need that level of support within a class around needing to do a check-in around some anxious feelings, we have a very robust staff of school adjustment counselors and guidance counselors that can definitely support these students. We want to build up those skills so students are able to rely on those as they're encountering these feelings and any kind of social emotional issue that arises. My feeling is just like we're talking about separating to engage in the academic piece, I think you could also say another caveat to this is helping students build some of those skills around socially, emotionally supporting themselves in the moment. And so that's one of the goals we have as well.
So just to piggyback on that, I obviously have some experience with special needs children, as I have 3 of my own. Some of these kids and students, including the neighbor who I've helped babysit since he was little. Some of these kids going from year to year to year and changing those counselors, they're set in their ways, like they're on a rigid platform where they can't get used to a new adjustment counselor. They've had their same play therapist or child therapist since they've been in fourth grade for some of them. And they get to the high school, they're comfortable with that person. They're not comfortable with a new person. So I was asking about certain accommodations for them because they might not be comfortable with the adjustment counselor they're given.
And I mean, my feeling is if it does rise to that level of need, then we should be addressing that through their IEP or any other supports that we have in place and working together with parent, with provider. That's something we would do regularly anyways. And I hear you, you know, it's when you're working through some difficult stuff in life and you're comfortable with somebody, that definitely provides a challenge of not having easy access to that person. But our goal is not to put students in a more difficult situation. It's to help build that capacity of building up those skills to work through situations and work with the team around that student as well.
Thank you. Ms. Bisnick, did you have a follow-up as well?
My second question is around whether you envision any, I'll use the word shenanigans, at lock or unlock time with children, or do you have a plan around how you're going to manage removal of the phones from that locker? Because I have to imagine that at least one child will take some other child's phone.
Yeah, so I was actually going to bring one to show everyone, but you know, so the cases that we have, they are numbered, and so what we're advising our faculty to do is assign students to a particular slot and a number. So we're aware of how where students are putting their phone in. As far as putting them in and taking them out, just like anything else, when we're finishing work, passing in work, it's going to be done in more of an orderly fashion than, okay, period's over, go get it. You know, that'd be a dangerous situation probably. So, no, overall, we're trying to control that environment. So.
I think there's one advantage too, that it was implemented in a little different way at the middle school. Same idea, same lockers, same strategy. So the rising freshmen are all very comfortable and familiar with this process. It's not something new to them. It's following the same procedures they had. Only they would put it in the morning and not get it back till the end of the day. And we watched that happen at the middle school, and the routines established rather quickly, more quickly than we even anticipated. And so that, you know, we have that slight advantage of having some experience with establishing those routines around putting them in and taking them out and distributing them.
And so potentially, I walk into school, I keep my phone in my pocket, and as long as I don't get caught taking it out, you don't know that I have it or that I, quote unquote, didn't put it into the locker, right? As long as I'm well
If you
behaved.
didn't, you're going to fall into that category where the loss of privilege might look different.
Yeah, and the ultimate goal is having phones away. And if a student's going to go through certain measures here, a couple things are going to come into play. Either they're not going to be able to resist taking it out, which is the problem why we went in this direction in the first place, and we'll deal with that as it comes up. My experience with this stuff, if I polled our students, there might be some upperclassmen that are not accustomed to doing this that probably aren't thrilled about the change as it's coming to them. Once they get in that routine, I think our students do a wonderful job really going along with anything we set in front of them. And if we're supporting it as a school, they jump right into it. And so that's something I'm always proud of with our students, and I do feel that that'll be the case.
I had a couple questions, and I don't think any of my questions will prompt any new workarounds for students, so I will just go ahead and ask them forthrightly. I believe I understood the phone should be powered off and put into the locker. I do have concern with students that perhaps have devices that are paired with their phones, and the concern that I've heard maybe from my students is the amount of time it takes to boot up from a power off and then power it back off, and all of that between classes isn't a feasible solution, so they would rather not admit to having a phone at all and keep it buried in the bottom of a backpack and try the self-discipline. But I do wonder, to your point about that is a habit we're trying to break or build up in the students to like not check their phones. But if they've still got the phone on and the device on their arm, but that said, these kids are super smart and they all have Google Docs open and can, basically replicate some of the functionality of our phones too. So.
Yep. So to answer a couple of pieces of your statement, as far as phones go, watches go, our thought, because we've talked about this and really hashed a lot of this out, and our thought would be if most of their peers have their phone away, who's going to be texting them on their phone in the first place? Now, that won't completely limit it, but it hopefully it drastically limits that piece. The other, it becomes a classroom management piece. I mean, teachers are well aware of the technology and how it kind of creeps into our classrooms. I mean, they've dealt with it as closely as anybody, and so. I trust that they'll be able to manage that piece for sure. We're not going to go down the road of taking your Apple Watch off and putting it in the, that's not something I think we have to do at this point, because if we hit the rewind button a couple years, I was a big proponent of, I think we need to educate our students how to live with them, work with them, have them with them, that type of thing. And the more we've dug in and really looked at the research and just really anecdotally from day-to-day functioning, seen it's a real challenge. And even best of intentions, I mean, look around the, kind of the workplace or any supermarket you're in, everybody's on one. I mean, and it's not just the teens, right? It's adults too. So the etiquette and being in the moment and tuned into what we're doing, that's what we're trying to develop here. And just that, some of that older kind of, old school kind of being in the moment, disconnected and being engaged in what we're presenting, within the classes. That's the ultimate goal here. There was one, you asked about the watches and
the Google Docs, and you
Docs, yeah.
actually led
So-
into my next question as well about staff and phones. But
Yeah, from the end of it, they're using technology all day. I will say that it's not something they use in every minute of every day. So it's pretty obvious if a screen is up in a classroom when the students are working on a discussion or something along those lines where the computer isn't needed. So there are some, there's some ways that students can connect still, but we're trying to limit that, appropriately monitor it, and keep them engaged in the classes. So we're well aware that the computers can act as a communication device as well.
okay. And the last part that you just started to touch on was about just the etiquette in the classroom and being present. And so I'm sure you've spoken with your staff about modeling this behavior that we're expecting. Okay.
Yeah, and that's we're all there. I mean, I was I was in the main office today, and talking to another adult, and I was actually forwarding my administrative assistant an email from my phone, and someone started talking to me, and I said, "Oh, just hold on one sec. I just got to finish this." And so then they said, "Oh, I thought you were just scrolling through your phone." I said, So point being, like, even when you're using it for work, it can be misinterpreted. So to do a better job and be more transparent with how we're doing things with our cell phones as faculty within the building, for sure.
Thank you so much. Ms. Robinson.
Thank you, Mr. Thomas. Would this perhaps lead to some opportunities for training students how to use phones just more responsibly, or any type of technology, like just moving into like the whole AI, like just using technology more responsibly? Could this be an opportunity for advisories, something?
Yeah, I think it's always there, and it's something at times we've worked on in a place like advisory, and especially with our younger students as they transition to high school, under our old policy where they would have it on them at all times, in that etiquette piece of using the technology. So that's always open to us, and we're always looking, the ultimate goal here is to develop students into well-rounded young adults here, and so they're going to be out in the workplace, they're going to be off at school somewhere, they're going to be in the services, and they're going to need to be able to use their cell phone appropriately. When it's impacting your paycheck in your wallet at whether it's a job in high school or out of high school, you don't want someone losing a job over something like that, and you want them to have some of those skills built up. So we're always looking in that direction. Sure.
I think the key right now is that disconnecting, and it's a significant issue. And so maybe starting with getting the disconnect, and then it's a matter of then when there's conversations and discussions. But first we need to get them engaged in learning. So I just put up here just so that you know, I think that was it, right, for question? These are the handbook changes that we're proposing, it's the same as just was outlined by Mark. Throughout it, just sort of how that this will be included in the handbook itself. And so I guess what I'm hoping is that we'll have a motion to accept the handbook language.
Sure.
So.
Okay. Ms. Quayler, were you going to make a motion?
Oh, no, I had my other question. My other question was just, do you anticipate any parent pushback?
I'm sure there'll be some clarifying questions from parents and on an individual basis. I haven't received any yet. I've talked with a few parents, but very supportive, some very supportive feedback through email. But anytime there's a new policy, there's usually some questions that go into play, especially when there's been students in the building, policy changes, now it's something new to them. So I anticipate some, but we're always open to having any discussion with any parent.
Okay. Ms. Bisnick.
Well, I would like to make the motion that's on the screen, that we adopt the handbook language changes described by Mr. Thomas in regards to electronic device policies, student use of electronic devices, and technology as a privilege.
Second.
Thank you, Mayor Cahill. Thank you, Ms. Bisnick. Do we have any further discussion? We will do a roll call vote. Mayor Cahill?
Yes.
Kimberly Coelho?
Yes.
Dr. Mackenzie DeFranza?
Yes.
Ms. Robinson?
Yes.
Dr. Silva?
Yes.
Ms. Visnick?
Yes.
And Ms. Abel, yes. 7-0. Thank you.
All right. And thank you very much, Mark, for
Thank you.
coming forward. All right, so the next item that I have is the discussion about the school district calendar change. And so my apologies to all of you, and I think we all looked at the calendar in the central office bazillion times. Julia with the union looked at it, we all did, and we all neglected to notice that we did not take into consideration that March 5th of 2024 is going to be a presidential primary election. And I think given the way in which we've addressed presidential primaries and primary elections in general, we're going to have to go back and revisit the calendar, because we should, it's my recommendation that we would not have students present in schools on March 5th because of the presidential primary election. So that being said, I sort of looked through the calendar, the draft calendar, and we did provide you with a draft calendar as some supporting documents with one option, and then we've discussed several options, and I'm happy to have an open discussion with all of you around what some of those options are. One of the proposal that I would be recommending currently on the calendar, December 7th, 2023, is a half day for K through 8 and a full day for the high school. I'm proposing that we make that day a full day for all students. And then Friday, December 8th, which is currently listed as a PD day / conference day for elementary and middle school, I would switch for K to 8 a half-day K to 8 and a full day at the high school. And I want to explain why it's a full day at the high school. As Mark and I met this morning, and he pointed out, we're very tight on hours for, we have to have 990 hours of instruction in order to meet the requirements of DESE, and we are very close to that. And so we would not want to eliminate those hours for the high school. So the proposal is that we would have a full day of school on December 7th and a half day for K to 8. That would allow those teachers to utilize the afternoon time for conferences, and then we as administrators would work out with the teachers 3 other hours out of, we have in our contractually 28 hours outside of the school day. So teachers would be utilizing those 3 of those 28 hours outside of the contractual day to make up the difference in time for the conferences for elementary and middle school. So that is my preferred option at this point in time as I go forward. There is a second option that I want to make sure we bring forward, and that would be to just have March 5th be a no school day for anyone. And that would mean that we would push the calendar from Wednesday. It's currently proposed, if there are 5 snow days, to end, the last day of school would be Wednesday, June 26th. That would make our last day of school Thursday, June 27th. So I have some concerns about extending the calendar so far into June. That's why my preferred option would be to take a look at just changing the schedule as the calendar as we have it right now. So.
Can I make a motion so we can start discussion?
Please, Mayor Keiko.
I move that we approve the amendments to the calendar as the superintendent explained them.
Second.
Thank you, Mayor Cahill. Thank you, Dr. Silva. Ms. Visnick.
I wish to say 2 things, and the first is, without this change, if we were to extend, if we were to, if somebody at this table tries to amend and take the second option on that slide, and there were no snow days, which would be perhaps your dream, to not have to ever call
would
a
be
snow
my
day, Dr.
dream.
Turocek.
It has not happened in my experience
That
here in
puts us in a
Beverly.
quandary, right? Because the last scheduled day is Tuesday, June 18th. And then to go another day, we can't go Wednesday, June 19th because Juneteenth is a holiday. So then that would put our last day on Thursday after a Wednesday holiday. So I just want to kind of throw that out there. I don't know if anybody was thinking about that second option, but that is like in my mind, a big negative to the second option that's on the slide. And relative to discussing other options, in full disclosure, I voted no for this calendar, and I voted no because I didn't think we should be recognizing religious holidays. We can't. I don't believe we can recognize some and not all, and it is truly impossible to recognize all religious holidays. And so I think as another option, should this group not prefer the motion that's already on the table, is to retract a celebration of any one of the 2 or both of the religious holidays that are currently on our calendar.
I will say that as a leadership cabinet, we discussed that as well. One of my concerns with that for this school year is that Yom Kippur is very soon, and I think that, it's not much notice to give families if we change the calendar for a September 25th date. So
Totally agree.
I think that would have been a great conversation if it was April and we were able to kind of give enough notice to families, but I feel like that is not. I will say, I think we had a pretty robust discussion when we were voting and still didn't remember there was no March 5th on it. I don't know how we did that. But look, going forward for the 24-25 school year, I'm going to be working with the group to take a look at it. We've had some conversations. We've actually had some preliminary conversations, and it's to continue the discussion that we had then. So why, is this time, given that the school year calendar has been extended so deep into June with the number of federal holidays that we have and all of the other, especially in the light of the presidential election, that we would be having a deeper discussion about those holidays for the next coming year. And I believe it's the right time to do that, so.
And I'd just offer a refresh that we have some unit contracts that had named holidays, and we needed to work through some of
Yeah,
that as well.
we would have to address some of those, yes. So.
Any more discussion?
I would just add, I did speak with so when we set the calendar, prior to me coming to school committee, I typically meet with the union and make sure that they have an understanding, and Julia looks it over, and she and I were both like scratching our heads how we didn't catch the March 5th. I brought it to her. She went to the board. The board had some of our elementary members of her board had some concerns about this, more so making sure that we could adjust for the conferences. I met this afternoon with Dot. I mean, I've had a conversation with others. We could have conferences on the March day. Like there is a way to kind of take a look at what we're doing, but she understands that she knows the union is in full knowledge that I'm coming forward, that I had these options, that this was my preferred option. And so I just want to let you know that I did have a chance to talk with them. I can't state that they were in full agreement with the idea, but they understand that something has to be done. So just sharing
Okay,
that.
Ms. Visnick.
I wish to lay on the table a fairly controversial idea, but for people to be thinking about, because we will have to have this conversation come January when we look at next year's calendar. The idea of having our schools open during an election, and certainly the presidential primary, I do not want our schools open. However, in elections where there's much lower turnout, that might be a palatable thing in order to reclaim a day back on our calendar. But what might be the best, and we've had this conversation a few other times, is if we could find other places than our schools to hold our elections. I don't believe that, and I'm looking at you, Mr. Mayor, because I don't believe that conversation ever goes anywhere, because I don't believe it's anybody's job. No one ever gets assigned the task of looking, is it possible? Is it honestly possible, and or with or without a waiver from the state? So if we really want to, as a school body, say, I can't, like this year, we're going to have 3 days of no school because of elections. That's a hit, in my opinion. That is a disruption both to the educational process, and it is a burden on the parents. And why is that the case? It's the case because some number of our schools are voting locations. And so I think in fairness to the parents and the students and the educators, we need to take a real hard, honest look and do some investigations around what other options exist.
I think
Mayor Cahill, I saw your hand first.
We can definitely revisit it. What we've run into in the past is having a hard time identifying appropriate spaces to locate polling places, because they all have to be within the ward that the voters come from. But we haven't looked at it in a bit, so we can definitely look at it again together.
You can finish your thought.
Will you
Ms. Visnick.
please define the "we" there? Because I think that's part of the problem, because I don't believe that's my job. I don't ever leave this building going, okay, I have an action item.
Oh, I was going to
do
invite
this."
you.
bad.
I would say this, at the outset of considering next year's calendar, let's talk again, and let's set that meeting to happen. I mean, really and truly, what we struggle with is finding polling places within the wards that people need to vote in. But when I say we, yes, it's who does it make sense to have in that conversation? Public safety, mayor's office, school committee, I think as a starting point.
School administration.
Well, I meant I meant all of us.
Oh, okay.
I'm going to go to
yes.
Dr. Churchick, then
Yeah.
Dr.
Does that make
Silva.
sense? I mean, if that makes sense to you folks, let's agree to set something up at the outset when we're starting with next year's calendar.
And so my comment was just for all of you to understand, typically we have a conversation in January and a vote in February. So just keeping the timeline in mind as to when and how we might need to have those conversations.
Dr. Silva.
I was just going to bring up and say that, fortunately in Beverly, there's a number of community centers. Ward 4 has one. Centerville has one. There's a McPherson Center. So there's probably a number of places scattered about the city that could serve as other venues.
We can hope.
Okay.
So, and just a final note, you have the motion that's on the table, you actually have a calendar that represents that. It's the one that Donna supplied you with the red markings for that.
Right.
That's what that
So
was.
we do have a motion on the table made by Mayor Cahill, seconded by Dr. Jeffrey Silva, for making December 7th a full school day, making Friday, December 8th a half-day release for K through 8 and a full day for high school, and then making Tuesday, March 5th, the presidential primary day, a no-school day for students, and a professional development day for staff.
Correct.
I don't see any more hands for discussion. I think we're ready for a vote. I'll call the roll. Mayor Cahill,
Yes.
Ms. Coelho,
Yes.
Dr. Mackenzie DeFranza,
Yes.
Ms. Robinson,
Yes.
Dr. Silva,
Yes.
Ms. Visnick,
Yes.
and Ms. Abel, yes, 7-0. Thank you, Dr. Turchek.
All right, thank you. And I'm going to actually ask Erin to come join us. Mark, she might kick you out of your seat now. Right, I don't know how come I think, there we go. So that's the start. No, it's just, I didn't delete them all. Remember, I had two sets, it's okay. So Erin is here, and she has two topics that she's going to talk with you right now about. The first is human resources and some Munis work that we've done, and the second is the IT. So yes, this is first.
Okay.
I get what you're saying.
It was a little out of order in my head. Thank you, everyone, for having us tonight. Just a quick update on our hiring this summer. We've currently hired for the following positions: 4 Unit B positions. Those are assistant principals and curriculum director positions in the administrative unit. We've hired for 52 Unit A positions. It's teachers, BCBAs, team chairs, psychologists, all sorts of different positions for Unit A. And then 16 Unit C positions, which are paraprofessional positions. We continue to interview for middle school special ed teachers. We're hopeful on a couple of those, that we have a couple in the works, so we're hoping that we can take care of that in the next couple of days, as well as paraprofessionals district-wide, bus drivers, and food service workers. This is very similar to years past in terms of trying to staff those positions. I don't know if you're the next one. So in terms of the bus driver and food service advertisements, specifically for bus drivers, we've been, looking for people in kind of a unique and different way. This is a picture of a live shot of one of our billboards. I never realized how many billboards there are in the Peabody, Danvers area until we were trying to advertise on them. There are quite a few. So we have one running the month of August on Route 1. It's by Santarpio's Pizza, in case you want to go by. They rotates through a bunch of advertisements. And then we also have one on 114 down by the McDonald's, kind of PetSmart McDonald's area. So, so we're hoping to that will help us bring in some more drivers, some areas that we might, people might be traveling and see them up there. Advertising in the Beverly Patch, we have that running. We have it running on Indeed, Salem News as well. And so we've been able so far to bring in 4 food service employees, as well as 3 potential bus and van drivers that we're working on right now, and 4 definite monitors. So we have been successful, a little bit successful, but we certainly still need people in all of these areas. This is something that's common throughout the Commonwealth, that we're, the districts and different HR directors are struggling with, and principals for paraprofessionals as well. So just we're trying different things to see if we can get people into, but we're pretty good to go to start the year. So we feel pretty confident in those areas. In terms of moving on to Our Munis update, last year we had a comprehensive human capital management assessment done, and we were looking at just our human resources and business management processes and procedures. We identified areas last year in terms of places that we could improve efficiency. So utilizing position control, some of our reporting features. Some of us have been here for a while and not known, all the different reporting features that we could use and make life much easier and more efficient utilizing the program, as well as workflow for some of our paperwork. Just, again, trying to modernize and make ourselves much more efficient and not duplicate our efforts in a lot of different areas. So that was kind of what came through in some of our goal areas. So in terms of that, our update is, we had to do a system upgrade of the whole system with the city and schools. That's one big business system. And so that occurred. We were hoping it was going to occur in January, but they were backed up with Munis in terms of everyone needing to go through an upgrade. So it didn't happen until April, but we did get it done, and it was successful in kind of working with the city on that venture. And then we had set up trainings. We had trainings in the spring in terms of looking at just what it would take to kind of alter our systems for position control and for our reporting and job workflows. And so that training was completed a little bit later after the upgrade, probably in the May timeframe. We completed some of that. And finally, we're looking to deploy employee self-service. That was one of the first things we wanted to be able to do, where people could get their paychecks online, they could see their pay stubs as well as their W-2s. So we are closest with that. We have done the training for that and started working with Steve Palomo on how we're going to implement that. So my goal for that is by October 1, and I think that will be amazing for both our payroll, because people applying for home loans and so forth are constantly in touch with payroll. And so this will be just a nice way for them to be able to, anytime that you want to be able to have your check stubs as well as your W-2s, you'll be able to have those. So we're, again, working with the city on all of this and their staff so that we can kind of roll things out together, different components at different times. We did the training for applicant tracking. So again, this is to reduce redundancies and increase efficiencies. We've done the training for it. We're going to be working on the test phase of it next, which would be people would apply through our Munis platform as opposed to different platforms. And then all their information would be in there that would then automatically, once they're hired, sync with our position control and eventually with our talent content manager in terms of their personnel files. So again, right now it's people entering a lot of data at different times, the same data, in order to have things happen, and so there can be errors as well as inefficiencies. So that we'll be working on throughout the entire year this year, and hopefully next year, throughout the year, we'll be able to complete that whole system project for ourselves. So that's just a little bit on the HR front and how things are going.
And if I can just jump in, this has been a huge project for Jean and for Erin, and the amount of, and for the folks that work in the offices there, having new training. But we're very excited about the opportunity to kind of particularly have the employee self-service up and have kind of dip our toe into the year 2000. We kind of say, well, we're in 92. We're going to try to catch up and see what we can get.
Eventually, we like to push out trainings that way to staff.
There's a lot of capabilities.
Sync right into their personnel files.
It's been a lot of work, and again, a lot of coordinating with the city too. So the folks on the city side getting some of that work done. So before we go to our IT reorganization proposal, do I have any questions for Erin on any of the things that she just said?
Ms. Robinson.
Thank you, President Abel. Can we go back to the slide that shows the hires over the summer?
That one?
Yeah, so I'm just, that 52 isn't broken down, but well, teachers, BCBAs. I didn't think we had that many positions open in the spring. Did we? I'm just curious if we lost
Yeah,
a lot of,
we have had, it's pretty similar number from year to year, actually, when you look at it year to year. And so, because in my head, I felt like, oh, we have fewer hires this year. Maybe it was just a calmer season. I don't know. But it's pretty similar to last year. And it is people that just come and go from the district that go to other districts. And it's ebbs and flows right up to the very end.
so how many middle school teachers are we looking for at this?
Oh, the special education teachers, you mean?
Right.
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
right now we might be down to one.
Yeah.
We're hopeful that we're down to one.
Okay.
Cahill.
Madam President, thanks. I'd like to just make an observation. At the new teacher orientation this morning, we had, it seemed an appropriate number, you kind of gauging year to year. But what struck me was I asked them, how many of you is this your first job as a teacher? And only a handful of names,
Two or
handful of
three.
people,
I only saw one
which meant everyone else is an experienced teacher coming from another school or another district, right? Which, it's great to have brand new teachers, but I was just really, I think, pleasantly surprised that we're attracting teachers with experience from other school districts or private settings or whatever.
I think this has been while it ends up having the same numbers, and we were amazed because we looked at this, what did we say last year at this time, and how were we? Really similar in numbers. The cadence was very different this year. So we were sitting in August 1st saying, oh, we didn't have to hire very many teachers. And then whoosh, 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 in came a lot of teachers going to other districts. And then when we posted our jobs, in came a lot of teachers from other districts, to the point where there was a posting on the superintendent's listserv today that said, stop stealing each other's teachers. It's getting too close to the start of the year, right? There's just a lot. It's a different, it's different. Teachers are looking at swapping districts more easily than they had in the past. I think teaching has always been 28 years in the same district. I don't think you've changed your district, right? And I think there's this new awareness of, for many, it's the commute. I really think for many, I had a lot of people say, I live in, Lynn and I've been driving to Wellesley, or I live in Middleton and I'm driving into Everett, or, there's just a lot of people who are trying to look at where they're going and for us, the teachers that we lost, and I did exit interviews with at least 6 of them. I live in southern New Hampshire and I got a job in, North Andover, or I live in Chelmsford and I've been driving to Beverly, but there was a job in Littleton. So there's the turnover reasons are different than they had been in the past. So it's just curious, and the cadence of it coming in, it's been kind of in waves. So it's very interesting, and I don't know if that's a trend that we'll see continue into future years, but it's definitely different than it has been. That's been what's, I think, the most different. So.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other questions or comments? Okay, we can move along.
Right. So back to Erin and her team to talk about the IT department.
All right, so we're here tonight. Thank you for having us for this. We want to share some information about restructuring our technology department. And I think in order to understand our need to do that, it's important to know who we are, where we've been, and kind of where we're headed. So we're currently a staff of 8 people. And it's a group of people that are highly dedicated to what they do. They've been here for a long time, and they're very, very good at what they do. So we have Steve Paloma, who's the IT director, Ed Gleason, who's our network specialist, Judy Miller is our director of digital learning, and then we have our technicians at the various school levels, Michelle Newman, Tom Quinlan, Alice Williams, and Dylan Terry. And finally, at the high school, we have Brittany Gallagher, who is a support, office support for the group. So it's a great group of people. I think they do a lot, and so it's important to know kind of what they do and where they've come. So we're going to look back at the history a little bit, and Judy's going to share just a little bit. A lot of you have been here a long time and know some of this, but I think it's good to reflect on it before we kind of think of what are some projects and value added that they have brought in terms, again, of efficiencies to our district, and then we'll move for goals moving forward with
Okay.
our restructuring.
Yes, I have been here a long time. So the history, actually the past 2 decades has been focusing on, we really focused on providing hardware to support teaching and learning. But in the past decade, some of the highlights of the past decade have been like, we all remember in 2011, we started the BHS one-to-one lease program, and this was actually one of the first in New England. In 2018, we started the middle school one-to-one iPad program. And some districts during COVID had to overnight create a one-to-one K-12. But fortunately, we were in a position at this point, as you can see, that we really switched, we had to just focus on a one-to-one for elementary schools. Can you imagine if we had to do K-12? So, and throughout all this, our tech IT department has rebuilt our entire network, the entire wireless structure, all using in-house resources. So some of other things that we achieved is this morning I saw students picking up their laptops for the 13th year in a row. So it's a program that has sustained for that quite a while. Very proud of that. We've had school districts over the years from across the country visit us to see our laptop program and other aspects, even this building, the middle school, even from other countries. I think we had a group from Thailand one year. Apple, at one point, sent engineers to observe what we're doing in terms of the lease program to see if they could replicate it with other customers because it's been so successful. And then they actually, I don't know if people know this, but they produced a commercial that highlighted Beverly Public Schools during COVID because of some of our efficiencies that we have in our laptop program. And I think where we are now, all of our processes have become so efficient. This is a brag time, right? Mm-hmm. They've really become so efficient. We're beginning to be able to focus on other major areas.
Great. Thank you very much. So kind of thinking about also talking about some of our highlights in our projects. Like Judy said, when we brought the network in-house, this was a cost savings for the district. The quote was about $340,000. And this involved quite a bit. It was replacing all the hardware, configuring all the hardware, and just so we're aware, other districts don't do this in-house. That's not something that happens. They pay other people to do this for them. So it kind of shows the skill level of our employees. Again, we're a lean machine, not a lot of people. There are tech departments with double the amount of employees in that area, and just their skill level. An example was the middle school. The network was put in place and configured in one weekend, which is, again, amazing. All the hardware was installed, phones, printers, wireless, and cameras were connected.
And to just show how far we've come, when we moved into the high school, it took months and months to do the same thing that we did in a weekend.
Yep. So I think that's pretty impressive. Our digital signage, if you just think about the cost savings for the middle school alone, it was a $350,000 quote for a one-time fee and $14,000 for a yearly fee. They were able to develop it and did it for under $2,000 for the hardware and $0 per year. One thing that kind of goes along with that is the program that was very expensive, was also very technical, which required usually other districts to hire a person to be able to support that and put up the regular signage and update it, where ours was simplified so that it could be run by any of the administrative staff in the buildings. So I think that, again, was another cost savings there. On the next page, we have a custom tech database that they again, developed themselves that other districts have wanted from them. And it tracks every piece of device and technology in the district. It's really an amazing database. We received 2 years worth of grants, a $420,000 grant and a $500,000 grant for technology. And we received it part and parcel because of this database. Very small number of schools were able to apply for this because they were afraid of the audit that would go along with it because they don't have a database to track like we do. And the amount of information that the grant required. So this is something that we were able to apply for it the second time around, or the second year of it, really was going to go to districts that were 80% free and reduced lunch districts. But again, so few people applied for it that there was money left over, that we were able to capitalize on that because of this specific tech database. Again, that's a $40,000 annual equivalency in terms of a software program. You all know the online registration verification portal that we built ourselves. That's a cost savings of $12,000 annually if Aspen was to do it and we were to partner with them for that module and how that would be set up. Library software, generally a $24,000 annual fee too. That's an in-house program. And then finally, we go from all the way from developing things to doing things manually, setting up all the devices. It's over 1,000 devices every year. Again, pretty much no other district does this themselves. They usually hire out to Crest, who unbox, tag, set up, and give a spreadsheet. Again, about a $10,000 cost savings. Our tech department used to take a month to do that when they first started doing it, and now have it down to 2 or 3 days. So again, this place is covered in iPads from one end to the other, and they are literally putting covers on with mallets, unboxing, tags that go on them so that we can track them, every piece of it that kind of goes together. So that's just a little bit of some of the projects they've done that have given us a lot of cost savings because of their willingness to do it, their willingness, their talent, their abilities to do these types of things. So I think it speaks highly of the group of people that we have in the tech department. On the next slide, you can see just in general the total cost savings of what I kind of walked through with you already. One-time savings cost generally in the area of $1.6 million, and then down the bottom, you can't see it on that screen, but it's recurring cost savings of about $135,000. So as you can see, this is an area that we certainly want to grow in. So if we look to the future, what does the future say for technology and our IT department? We've had a lot of success and become extremely efficient in supporting our hardware in the district, and we would like to focus more on custom in-house software programming as well as integration with third party. We have a lot of different software programs that we do purchase for, different things in the district, but this is kind of how do we have that connection and integration, and how are we able to do that? So, for example, business systems to educational development, all across the board. So kind of looking at how do we look at the different areas that we prioritize and kind of focus on that. So that's kind of part and parcel of why we need to restructure our department. If you look on the next slide, it talks about the systems administrator. We have a network administrator, and when we needed a network administrator, we didn't have necessarily it in-house. We've brought it in-house, we've simplified it, and automated a lot of pieces of that. So now the network piece is only a part. We can do more with that personnel, and kind of looking at how do we stretch that in the future. So an emphasis on software development, and yes, writing software, but also, they're very talented in how to utilize different things as in AI and so forth to get what we need and to develop what we need in those areas, as well as workflows in the district. So kind of shifting our focus in that area, as well as that person still managing the servers and the network equipment. It's just those have become a part of the job, not the entire job. And troubleshooting and all escalated issues that come up. So this is someone who, works under Steve and is kind of Steve's backup in many areas, as well as moving in the development area. Our technicians do an amazing job and have become extremely efficient as well in what they're doing. We have a technician at the high school who handles all of the laptops in terms of repairs, as well as any technical issues in the high school. You think it he takes care of it. We're looking at having someone who's also going to be assisting the systems administrator in different areas and being that backup person. It's really important. We have a very talented group, but again, these people could go anywhere at any time. So we also have to have backup for each of these positions so that we're all working on the same page and have that cover for each other. And our elementary program, we used to have hand-me-down kind of devices in there, and now we've cycled in more and more new devices into the elementaries, which requires more repairs. So this person would also be, we'd be utilizing that person to do some of those repairs. Again, have built in and become very efficient at the high school, gives us that opportunity to do so. So those were, that's kind of our phase one for the next year, what we would like to do in terms of restructuring our IT department. So that's what I have. Any questions for myself, Steve, or Judy?
Mayor Cahill.
Wow. Thank you. Thank you, team, and for the other 6 folks, please pass it along. We know great work's been going on for quite some time in the IT department, so thanks. What would be the difference in FTEs? What would go away, if anything? I'm trying to follow you on laptops consolidated to one person, for example. You know, how would anything here impact total FTEs?
It's not going to impact and negatively impact FTEs. The FTEs would stay the same. We're expanding their roles because they become more efficient and moving in different areas. So in terms of that, right now it would be it's budget neutral. We call it budget neutral, but
yeah,
it's
given-
not an FTE
Right.
change. Like, we're not necessarily.
So is this something that we're trying to do within this school year? And so would there be new positions posted and other positions go away, and internal folks have the ability to apply, but you've still got to
Exactly.
run an open
All of the
process?
above.
So somebody may end up without a chair, right?
Yeah.
Possible.
Yeah, no, well, maybe, but no.
Well, I mean, there's got to be an
I doubt it.
integrity to a job
There'd be no-
posting and
yeah.
hiring process, right?
Right, and so I think the integrity of the hiring process is important. I think just making sure, I think right now what we're trying to do is make sure that we have the right job description for the right role. Erin neglected to say this, and I will say it blatantly. Our tech department right now, because of the roles that they're in, their salary levels are not at par for this kind of work. So it's a matter of kind of taking a look of what you're asking someone to do and how you compensate them for that kind of work. And so there is a shifting of that. That's really the goal, I think, part of us that we're trying to get at, making sure we have amazing people in our department. We want to make sure that we're offering opportunities for growth for the folks that we have in our department. This expands, by expanding the kind of the description and the reach for the work that's being done, it's providing growth opportunities for some of the folks that work with us, which I think it's a small department, so that growth opportunity hasn't always been there. In terms of, I would not unequivocally say that it would not add an FTE. If I think as we went along, if we felt like it needed to, we might come forward and say we might need an FTE. We believe that we would have to go through the process and let the process work and find out if there were empty seats or not empty seats or extra chairs or all of those things. Our goal is to not, we are in no way trying to trim people out of the department. So our goal is not to eliminate people, but it's to examine and explore what it looks like with a posting like that and who might be eligible for it and who might be interested in it and what that would look like. By no means are we taking on Apple or Google with our salary structure, even with some new positions, but we're certainly looking to try to make sure that, I think, this is my 4th time, Erin, sharing this presentation with me, and I every time am in awe and struck that this has just been a quiet group that has just continually added value to the district, almost with just this, oh, sure, it's kind of like, Well, just tell Steve, we'll just get some more. We'll just get 500 more iPads and deploy them into the district and get them up and running, and he and his team just go out there and they do it. And I think this is a reckoning that, not only have they done it, they've done it so well that they've managed for us to be able to expand our horizons and look at the one piece that's up here where Erin talked about looking at the software integrations. As we add devices, we're adding software licenses from a number of different places. Our curriculum now all runs on licensure. That all has to connect in with Aspen, all of those things. And there's code that gets written underneath all of that to kind of make it do it seamlessly. Our apps update every 24 hours. Am I right about that? Yep. So if a student moves in on a Tuesday and we issue them their information and we add that information into Aspen, the next day they're generating what they need to use in the classroom. That's really, really efficient, far more efficient than many districts around us do. So looking at how do we support that, and we don't have a position that we've advertised that says you're going to be the systems administrator and you're going to take a look at software development for us. That's not a position that we have. So I don't know if that answered the question.
Mayor Cahill?
Yeah, I appreciate that. And I understand that this, when it's all played out, it may be the same number of FTs, it may be additional. I wouldn't expect it would be fewer. The work
Won't be
doesn't go
fewer,
away,
correct.
but I guess, is it clear yet, is it clear yet what job description or what set of responsibilities may no longer be part of the org chart because some of these new positions start to take on?
Yeah,
Is it clear yet? Not really?
I would say no, but I do think that it's what we're identifying is what used to take us a month to deploy now only takes us 2 or 3 days. So there's more time and more availability. And so if it used to take 5 people to get something going for one project that they're working on, not the whole, then we now have efficiencies around that. And so we don't know how the shifting will impact that. And that's, I think, what we want to explore. Did I express that? Yeah.
Thanks.
Something that I picked up from the presentation was the fact that so much hardware efficiency has been gained that there's an opportunity to look at the software. And I think as a parent to students in the district who sees the variety of software platforms that have come to be used, and also recognizing that teachers have adopted things either to pilot them or to get free use of, or to, subscribe, and maybe we have a patchwork of different tools. I'm thinking like Seesaw in some of the elementary schools, and just a whole bunch of different things, Remind, and all those different things that we have going on. I see a big opportunity for data breach, and as well as sort of a disconnected feeling for families if they're getting some of their sports information here and some of their music information here, and there's just too many apps I think that students are logging into and putting in their passwords, and parents are giving their phone numbers, and there's just a lot where our data is all living and residing. So I'm happy to hear that some of the focus will be on the software, and I hope that we can have some efficiencies as well as some security from that. And what I'm also hearing is that we have a lot of bespoke development within our district, which I think in some ways protects us from some of the malware attacks and bigger things that happen to districts that are all on the same platform or a shared platform. And I trust this department to really always consider some of the security aspects and the privacy aspects for our students as they're endeavoring on some of the software work. So thank you.
Steve gets a call from me every time another district has one. That's not going to happen to us, right? And he's like, nope, we're good. I'm like, okay, we're good. It's good. So,
Dr. Silva.
I'm curious to know if there's a need for budgeting for training, as these. I mean, in terms of what exists right now with your budget for training personnel, is there sufficient budget for that?
Training in what? Are you the hardware?
The hardware, the tools that you're developing, the coding. I mean, I would assume that with the personnel that you have, the lean personnel that you have, that there's a need for training that might be needed to keep up
And
with.
Sue and I and Steve have talked about that, just in particular, and Steve, you can talk to the different
Certifications that none of us understand.
certifications that I don't understand. But certainly, we have talked about that and what we need to do in terms of certifications to keep moving forward. So we don't have a set amount, but we certainly have talked about that and what that would look like
Right.
for that department. So-
Right, and I think we've talked about within these positions, what certifications, and maybe not do they have them, but how would they, what would be the expectation to achieve them? How would we support them in that growth? I think that, we think a lot about teacher professional development, but we have a department of people who are keeping us afloat, and what does that professional development, so I think that's where you're getting at. And,
Yes.
and yes, that's a huge part of the conversation and component that we're having. So in terms of budgeting for that, when we say cost neutral, Jean was not here yesterday, but I said, that's Jean's term, that's what she'll, but we develop efficiencies and we save money in some places along the way. So looking at ways, the things that we would save the money, we would make up the difference in the cost for the positions and/or whatever professional development might be needed to support the position. So it's all
Yes,
part of
that's
the
what I'm
package.
getting at.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think just to add, not just saving money on software that we would have bought, but saving money by removing software that we no longer need. So actually seeing savings for stuff that we've already been paying for.
Yeah, and I mean, my comment is just to make, given that there is a lean group, and given that there are going to be responsibilities, sort of more advanced responsibilities, you want to make sure that that team has the training that they need to keep that up and running and operating.
I don't know if you wanted to speak to any of the training you had thought about for.
So obviously, being we have a lot of Apple devices, so we do get provided a portal to Apple's training. So anyone that does the repairs in our district does have to get the certification that's through Apple, where you do go to a testing center and stuff like that. It's the same level of training that an Apple employee at an Apple store would get. Just because you're a school doesn't mean you can open their computers and repair them under warranty. They are very strict about that. I'm sure you've seen that in the news with the right to repair. So our technicians have gone through that training, which is many, many weeks of training and very hard tests to pass. So we do keep up with those. And every year when Apple releases new devices, they do mandate that we keep up and get recertified with that. And then I do think with systems administrator, I think there's definitely some opportunity to do more training on, not really networking, but one of the areas I'm looking at is the cloud. We have more and more of our data on the cloud, so I would like to look into some training for Amazon Cloud Services or the Google Cloud Services.
Yeah, that's great.
We actually house very little data in-house, which is one of the main ways that we stay safe here from cyber attacks. There's really nothing to get here.
Yeah, that's great.
Okay. I don't see any more hands. I think that does bring us to the end of the superintendent's report.
Yep, that's all I got.
Okay. I am going to move us along a little bit more quickly because we do have our school attorney waiting in the wings. That's the reason I'm using my device for full transparency. I'm communicating with our attorney to tell her the appropriate time to join us, save us some money. I hope she's watching TV or something and not on the clock. Okay. Let's see. So for the school committee chair updates, I just wanted to remind people that our meetings are still stacked in this calendar. We have CISL at 6:30 and our regular school committee meeting at 7:30 on Wednesday, September 13th. So we won't be back here in the next couple weeks, but on the 13th, we'll be here for both of those meetings. And our finance and facility and committee of the whole will meet here on the 27th of September. So just make sure your calendars are up to date for that. We had attempted to try a summer retreat, but I think with people's schedules, we didn't quite accomplish that. It is something in our policy that we will have an annual retreat. And I did want people to sort of refresh my memory on the topics that we wanted to request. I think we had a generic sort of request to see if MASC could give us some open meeting law reminders. We were not able all to participate in the one that the city conducted recently. I do believe that was recorded, though, so it is available. That might be a topic. We also had a discussion at one of our last meetings about some of the questions we have about the athletic fields and the divisions between scheduling between the Parks and Rec Department and our schools, and the processes for booking gymnasiums versus baseball and soccer and lacrosse fields and all of that. So that was a tentative topic that we could try to line up the right resources. And then I did receive a request from Ms. Robinson over the summer to talk more about staffing, and I think some of those questions came up this evening. But I wanted to put it out there if there were other topics that we should be exploring, and if there's any preferred dates. Again, our next meeting is not until September 13th, so it gives us a couple opportunities in the next couple weeks if people are available, or we could look in October.
Yep, so just to add to the athletic field is sort of clarification of the use of Herd Stadium.
Herd Stadium specifically,
Yeah.
clarification on that as well. Okay.
I'm going to say, Bill, I believe, as I look across the table at my friend Miss Jean, that I said that I would take that into FNF and that we would try to clarify
Okay.
the rental form and or do a presentation on that.
Okay. So
I think I've been on vacation more than Jean has been, so, in full transparency, Jean and I have not met about that.
okay. Is that something that you would prepare for the 27th of September, or?
I'm looking across the table. Do we think in the next month we can do that?
Yeah, I mean, we can meet and discuss what we think we can get on for the September or the October, but.
Okay.
So one main item that has come up most recently is that, what we charge for custodial coverage for rentals. And, we have the churches in the schools. The amount that we had posted several years ago doesn't cover double time on Sundays. So
Okay.
that's one thing that I would be bringing up first and foremost, but
That
and I
form
do
already
think
needs
that
to be
we-
updated.
Only thing I'm concerned about is our FNF bringing the whole herd and school. I think we might need to try to have a meeting prior to the meeting, maybe with the superintendent and myself and the other city officials to talk, so we can report back to you, is what I'm trying to say.
You could do it in 2 meetings. You could do the stuff
Two
you need in
meetings,
September.
Because we only
and
have
then-
an hour, so I'll call you.
Yeah.
I am just getting back from vacation today, so.
Yeah.
I know you are. That's why I said
A little groggy
I think
tonight.
we can
I
do
was
it in a
like,
month.
Okay. So it sounds like we might find multiple homes for that conversation.
Okay. I do think when it was mentioned, there was a little sort of back and forth about what the policies are. What I'd like to get out of it is what is the policy and how does one go about scheduling the fields and accessing herd for, activities outside of, not to necessarily schedule it for a whole season, but accessing it for the purposes of, making it available to the community. So, I'd like to have some clarity on that and how to go about doing that.
Okay. And we do have a building rental policy, but I think the other piece of it was that, our rec department, we kind of use shared services in a lot of ways too. Okay.
I can tell you that the system that exists is clunky, and I can tell you that because I have coached youth lacrosse, and getting field scheduled is one phase, but when there's an emergency and you need to shift to another field because one town called and said that their field is flooded, and you've got parents and kids waiting to get to a game, it's not efficient. And I think, we just need to think about
So,
making sure that
so
that is-
here's what I can offer. We need to meet with Bruce Doig to have some clarification ourselves, but then I'm happy to have you come in and we'll meet with you and lay it all out once I just don't want to give you misinformation. I would say come in tomorrow and I'll share you.
Yeah,
But I don't want to give you misinformation, so let us have some time to meet with him and answer. If you want to just send me those specific questions, if you have already, I apologize, but.
Yeah, but I also think this is a service to all the volunteers that are out there in the youth programs, whether it be lacrosse,
let's-
baseball, soccer, for
Right.
it to be known.
But let's get the
what process
clarification,
is.
and then we can
Yeah.
report back.
Okay.
Okay? Because I think we need more information to be able to give you solid answers.
Okay.
Okay?
Okay. And so I think that leaves, at least on the table in my mind, the open meeting law training, inviting our MASC counterparts to come in. And then I don't know if some of the information provided today satisfied your request. Were there any other topics that we wanted to tackle? I think like setting the date is one thing, but we also need to have time to prepare for whatever topic that we wanted to take on at our.
I might suggest, given part of our conversation from earlier this evening, that we maybe push some of the calendar discussions into that retreat. That might be a really good place, because I think that has a potential to be a very, I'll use the word emotionally charged. Everything from whether we open on voting days to the topic of religious holidays, and then, how smushed our calendar is, etc. That might be a good place to begin those conversations, because the next thing you know, it will be January, and it'll be time to vote on next year's calendar, right?
Okay.
And including but not limited to, is it realistic for us to move any given voting location out of a school? Is there a viable alternative? And that's not to say that somebody would do the research before that retreat, but that we could really iron some more of those details out. I see you writing over there. That's fantastic.
Yeah.
I love that.
Could I send a doodle poll out for some October dates that we could try to, I know September is very busy for a lot of people, but that would give you maybe some time to do some research. October's busy as well. Oh, boy. Do we want to try to get something on the calendar for September? I can send out the doodle poll and we can see, I know it's impossible to do here at the table to compare calendars and take into account everything that we don't even necessarily know ourselves right now. So, okay. Couple doodle polls will be coming out towards,
Madam President,
yes.
have we thanked you lately for being president? Thank you.
Oh, okay. My pleasure. Okay, so those were my two items, just to make sure we all are looking at our calendars and that we get something on the calendar so we comply with our own policies. And it's just a good idea to have those retreats so that we can have those more meaningful conversations together in a posted meeting. So with that, I would like to ask our policy subcommittee chair to give us a quick update on some of the summer work and updates on the policy.
So very quickly, our update is that I met with Donna, and we are, I have a bunch of action items that I need to finish before she will then begin to divvy up the policies per our policy that says we'll review all the policies every 5 years. Our clock got reset. Thanks to everybody for voting on the entirety of the policy manual at our last meeting. And so now every single meeting, Karen as chair of CISL, myself as chair of FNF, and you as chair, every single meeting, some number of policies should be in our packets and coming forward for review. And it may well be that, all we do is look at them and say, yeah, no changes are required. And they go in the pile and we update the date of when we last looked at them. So that rotation, which has been on hold for a while, is expected to start back up on September 13th. I need to get some work done before Donna can do her work to then, put those policies in everybody's packet. But please expect that in your next packet, some number of policies for review.
Correct. And as chair right now for that subcommittee, you're also monitoring the MASC to look for any statutory, regulatory, or other changes that
Yes,
they recommend.
Part of how Donna will pick is a prioritization list, and so I have a few requests from Mr. Silva about policies that he wanted reviewed sooner rather than later, and then the bulk of the prioritization will come from MASC bulletins.
Thank you so much for that update, Ms. Robinson.
Can I just ask, would each of us, every member, because I know I've never been part of a policy review, so would each of us get an equal number of policies to review?
No, they're all coming to you.
Oh, thank you. Thank you,
So,
Ms. Visnick.
so how we've done it in the,
Kind.
how we've done it in the past is they'll identify, and they're already actually, I think Ms. Visnick has already sort of sorted, so they're sorted by which ones would belong under curriculum, which ones would belong under finance, which ones might go to the committee of the whole. And so you'll get a list of, say, maybe, I don't know,
800.
25 policies, and you just go through them on a rotating basis, and you choose 2 or 3 each meeting. They go out.
Donna does the choosing for you. You don't really have to do anything.
Right, they go in, there was an order. She would do some of that, so, and Dot would work with you on that too, so.
And I think many of them are based on MASC sample policies, and they're tied to statutory things. We have certain ones that are tied to our home rule charter, and then there are just a few others that are our own special policies that we've adopted over the years.
Right, so also on my list of things to do is to try to make this primer about, for people who have never done this before, or for hopefully one day when I get to retire and not be at this table anymore, people will understand, here's how it happens, here's the spreadsheet, here's how you look at the spreadsheet, and for the most part, you wouldn't look at the spreadsheet, Donna would, but if you ever wanted to reference it, it has all these columns with all this information, including what Ms. Abel just said about, here's our policy number, here's the, well, they're really letters, here's the letters from MASC, and there's a little column for if we've personalized ours or not, and why, so there's a whole bunch of notes and then that document right now is under construction, because it's being updated, it's being massively updated with all the work that we did last year, and then it'll, part of the primer, the how do we do policy, will say here's where the document is in case anybody wants to reference it.
Thank you.
They're not all really yours.
Yeah. If you can look back, to maybe my first term is when we still had a regular cadence, and it was more efficient than it sounds. We'll catch up. Okay. Okay, and then again, as chair of finance and facility, I believe you have some transfers to bring forward.
Can we vote on them in bulk as a whole set, or do
Yeah.
you want each one separately?
I would be fine with that since it's a roll call. I don't want to have to call the roll 4 times.
Okay, so in your packets, you have 4 transfers. Each, their names are JE 433, JE 480, JE 1051, JE 610, and the Standing Committee on Finance and Facilities brings those 4 transfers forward with a recommendation of approval.
I'll make the motion to approve those journal entry transfers.
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Coelho. So we have a motion and a second. Any questions? These are pretty much items that were addressed at our last facility and finance, and it just didn't come to us yet.
Yes, these would be journal entries that need to be made at the end of, for the end of year.
Okay.
Closing out the books.
I will call the roll. Mayor Cahill,
Yes.
Ms. Coelho,
Yes.
Dr. Mackenzie DeFranza,
Yes.
Ms. Robinson,
Yes.
Dr. Silva,
Yes.
Ms. Visnick,
Yes.
and Ms. Abel. Yes. Okay, I'm just going to tell our attorney I'm about to read executive session. That completes our agenda with the exception of our executive session, agenda item number 8. The chair will move to vote to meet in executive session pursuant to Mass General Laws, Chapter 30A, Section 21A, for purposes 7 and 3, and not to return to open session. Purpose number 7 is to review and approve the confidential minutes from the negotiation subcommittee meeting, actually that should say committee of the whole meeting, from July 6, 2023. And purpose 3 is to discuss strategy with respect to and in preparation for collective bargaining with the AFSCME unit because an open discussion may have a detrimental effect on the bargaining position of the committee. So again, this motion has been made by the chair, and I'm looking for a second.
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Robinson. And we will do a roll call. Mayor Cahill,
Yes.
Ms. Coelho,
Yes.
Dr. Mackenzie DeFranza,
Yes.
Ms. Robinson, Dr. Silva,
Yes.
Ms. Visnick,
Yes.
and Ms. Abel, yes. The time is 8:39 PM. The motion to enter into executive session and not to return to open session for purposes 7 and 3 has passed 7-0. And at this time, we thank BevCam for joining us and broadcasting us, and we thank our audience members for their participation. We will be going into executive session in about 2 minutes. I'm just going to get our attorney into the platform. And let's see. Dr. Mackenzie DeFranza, can you just confirm that there's no other people in the room that would be observing or recording us?
That's true, other than my dog.
Okay. Sounds great. Yeah, we can stay here. Kim's not going to listen.
Audio for, talk to me. Do I leave that on?
If you could leave this on, but ensure we are not being recorded and not being broadcast. I am not recording.
A few minutes.
Okay.
Fold that in.
Fold that in. Thank you. I know. We'll check. We'll go out to the channels, right?
I will try.